All right, everyone, my time says 12:05, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you all for joining us today. This is, of course, our August 2021 forum and all about the LSAMP Blairs Turtle research. So before we get rolling into that, I do, of course, have a few things, some housekeeping first of all. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please enter them into the Q&A. You can also do the chat, but it's easier for us to find it in the Q&A, so please put it in there. And then at the very end, we'll do some time for questions. We'll try to answer whatever's been put in the Q&A box. And then you can also have a chance to ask some questions directly if you feel comfortable talking. To unmute, the best way to do it is to click the raise hand button. So that should be an option when you look at either the top or bottom of your screen, depending on where you put your options at, and then we can unmute you. You can ask your question that way. This will go until about 12:45 for the presentation, so we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes at the end for those questions. And then if you do have any questions that you think of later on after the presentation is over, feel free to contact us. I can forward those questions on to our presenter, and we can hopefully get those answered. Very last thing is that this presentation is recorded, and you will be able to access it later on. It will be on our YouTube page. Just search Partners of Scott County Watersheds. You'll find this and all of our past forums there. We should upload this within the next week or so. So if you're interested in that, it'll be out there available to you. So with that, clicked the wrong button, sorry. I just wanted to give you guys a sneak peek at our website. All right, think we got it. All right, sorry about that. So of course, we cannot do this without our partners. So the Partners of Scott County Watersheds mission is to improve the water quality through education, volunteer opportunities, and technical guidance, and without our partners, we wouldn't be able to do that. So thank you to those who are involved in those organizations. And if you're interested in becoming one of these partners, don't worry, I'll touch on that here shortly. I have some other things we have coming up, some more of those educational opportunities. We do have a workshop a month from today. It's going to be a really great workshop. It's free. It's all about pond management. So if you're interested in that, you can go to our website, find out some more information and register there. And then of course, next month we'll have our next forum all about the Westlake Restoration Project. Get an update on that from Mark Miller. So that should be an interesting one as well. And again, you can go to our website to register for that. Next one here, August is National Water Quality Month, and we of course are celebrating that and doing it with a giveaway. So we have these 4 items here, all a part of this one giveaway. And if you go to our Facebook page, just look up Partners of Scott County Watersheds, you'll find it's our top pinned post. And you have to like and share that post as well as like our Facebook page to be entered. That post has some information about how to be a good water quality steward this month. And of course, what you would be winning. So not only does it help to get you entered in that giveaway, but it helps to share information on how we can help to protect our natural resources. So please check that out if you're at all interested, or if you just want to spread the word about water quality. I did allude to this, of course, if you want to help be part of our mission, get more involved, we have several ways for you to do that. You can become a member. And during the month of August, we are also having a special membership promotion. So if you join this month, you get the rest of this year and next year all included. So you get about 17 months of membership for the price of 12 of regular year. So it's a pretty good deal. Hop on it quick. August is almost over. And then if you're interested in becoming a bigger partner, we do have many options for that. And this is all on our website. So you can check it out there if you're interested in learning any more. Finally, we have some free test strips from Iowa Corn. And We are more than happy to share this with anybody who is interested. You can just send us an email and we would be happy to send these test strips along with the directions, how to use it, kind of how to interpret it. We'd be happy to send that to you, but we can also come and conduct a one-time site visit for you where we bring out these nitrogen strips, but we also bring out some of our water quality tests, can look at some other parameters and help you determine how to improve water quality on your own property. So if you're interested in either one of those options, please do email us and we can schedule something from there. And with that, that leads us to our presentation. So again, we have Jimmy Wiebler, who is a naturalist and research coordinator here at Nahant Marsh. And I am going to stop sharing. We're actually in the same building, so we're just sharing a laptop today, so you'll have to give us a second here to switch things over, and then we'll be ready to go.
All right. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Yeah, thanks, Kelsey. Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks everyone for tuning in with me today to talk about Blairs turtles, one of my favorite things to study and talk about here at Nahant Marsh. So let's see here, how I forward slides. There we go. So I guess I'll tell you a little bit about myself before we get started. So my name is Jimmy Wiebler. I'm the research coordinator here at Nahant Marsh. And I'm also a full-time naturalist here. I'm in my third AmeriCorps term as a naturalist and educator here at Nahant. I'm actually rolling into a full-time position here starting at the end of the month. So I'm happy to be here at Nahant full-time going forward. And it's a great place to work and I enjoy what I do. The many things that I do, I get to kind of dip my toes in everything that I enjoy, everything I'm passionate about, education, conservation and research. I get to do all these different things. And so I'm from the area. I'm born and raised in Davenport, Iowa. I've lived here almost my whole life. I got my bachelor's degree at Augustana College, just right across the river from us here. And that's kind of where my research experience began. I went to Augustana I actually went there to join their pre-dentistry program and was looking at getting into dentistry. And I somehow found myself in all these biology classes and seemed to be pretty interesting. And I got involved with the professor there who was doing some research with hatchling painted turtles. And I was fortunate enough to join his lab and kind of start getting some research experience working with winter physiology of painted turtles. And so that was a pretty cool experience. And I wanted to continue working with winter physiology and cold physiology and that kind of thing. And so I joined a lab at Miami of Ohio, Miami University, and I kind of continued that research in a lab where I was studying how wood frogs survive cold temperatures. And so I've been researching amphibians and reptiles for quite some time now, and I was happy to find this job at Nahant where I could continue to do that. I get to go out there and trap turtles again, just like I did at Augustana with painted turtles. And so it's been very enjoyable to continue to do that here at Nahant. And so I've been here for, like I said, about 3 years now, and hope to be here a long time. So if you're not familiar with Nahant, I got a map here showing where we're located. We're technically in Southwest Davenport, Iowa. So I think I can show you with the mouse here, right off of Highway 6, basically south of Highway 61 and north of Highway 280. So if you know where Credit Island is, it's this island right here in the Mississippi. We're, just kind of an offshoot of that. And we're actually connected to the Mississippi River. We're by a culvert, and we gain water from the Mississippi every time it floods. And so, and Nahant used to be an island in the Mississippi, and over the years have become disconnected. And we were once an oxbow lake, a lake disconnected from the Mississippi, and over the years of siltation eventually became a marsh. But you can see that in this satellite image, there's the tip of Credit Island right here. There's Highway 280 is this one diagonal here, and we're just off of, here's Highway 22 or Rockingham Road. And so if you're trying to find Nahant, if you've never been here before, the best way is to whether you're coming from Illinois or the Iowa side, you can follow the brown signs on the highways, and it'll guide you here. But basically you get onto Wapello Avenue, and you come down here by the train tracks, and we have this really long driveway. Here's Wapello right here. And we have this really long driveway that goes all the way to our education center. And this large wetland here that you're seeing here is sort of the main marsh of Nahant Marsh. But Nahant is a 305-acre wetland preserve, and it's part of this broader wetland complex, almost 700 acres of a wetland complex. And so Nahant is bigger than the water that you see here when you're out visiting the education center. But we own some land over here, and we own a place called Carp Lake down here. And we own this is a new property over here that we're building trails on currently. And we actually restored this back into a wetland. It's our wetland mitigation bank, which I won't get into too much here, but just wanted to kind of show you an overlay of the land. And certainly want to encourage folks to come down here and visit if you've never been here before. It's certainly a treasure in Southwest Davenport. And our claim to fame is we're one of the largest urban wetlands on the upper Mississippi. So pretty special place to visit. And what's so cool about Nahant is we have a variety of different ecosystems here. And so we've got, the main marsh, we've got sedge and wet meadows. We have restored prairies here, and we've got different prairie types from, wet prairies to mesic prairies to sand prairies, where we have prickly pear cactus growing on. You can see right from our trails. We even have some floodplain forests down here. So I think that that variety of different ecosystems that we have here lends to the variety and the biodiversity that we have down here as far as wildlife goes, and plants too. And so Nahant's documented well over 400 different types of plant species here. I think we're up to 212 different bird species. I want to say, I think it's either 40 some or 60 some, I don't have the numbers memorized, but several different mammals, several different reptiles and amphibians here. We'll be talking about some of those turtle species here today. And we haven't even begun to count the insects and, the micro life here. So just an incredibly diverse place. And I think that has to do with a lot of the different ecosystems that we have here. So Nahant Marsh does basically three things. We do education, like I mentioned. My full-time position here is an educator, and we do programming for all ages, anywhere from toddlers all the way through senior citizens. We just finished up our round of successful summer camps this summer and had quite a bit of fun doing that. But we host field trips for different school districts. We do outreach, do all these things. We do adult programs, whether that's for woodworking or leading bird hikes. We offer workshops, and we do all these things for education. And we also do natural resources here. So we have a small conservation crew that works here, and they do anything from maintaining and building trails to removing invasive species that we have growing here, to putting prescribed fire on the land, and just restoring the ecosystem that's here. And our mission here at Nahant is to protect and restore the marsh, and they help us serve that mission. And the last thing that Nahant does is research. So that's what I'm here to talk to you today about. Our research program started back in 2012. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to coordinate our summer research program now for 3 summers. And the program itself is called the Lewis-Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation, so the LSAMP program. And it's a National Science Foundation funded program that's designed to get historically underrepresented minorities graduating in a STEM major, so in the sciences basically. And that's what the program's for. So we're able to work, we're partnered with Eastern Iowa Community College, and we're part of this alliance of 16 different colleges and universities that are within this Midwest region LSAMP Alliance. And we're able to pay students, pay interns to do research here at Nahant Marsh. We do offer unpaid internships to students who don't qualify through the LSAMP program. So we also offer those as well. But for the most part, this program is for those students that are historically underrepresented in the STEM fields. And we do several different projects through our LSAMP program. There's some projects that are typically recurring from year to year. Since I've been coordinating the research program, we've done things with turtles and bats and water quality, snakes and frogs and plants, plant diversity, insect diversity. We've done a number of different projects. And the one that's kind of been the longest running, I think, is the turtle population monitoring. So about 12 years ago is when this program, or when the turtle population monitoring started. And this guy here on the right, his name's Nick Holgerson. He's an independent biologist and a habitat restorer. And he came down here and he did some surveying and found the Blairs turtle, which we're talking about today. And so we're lucky to find that turtle. Didn't know it was here. He came out and found several of them, and that kind of kicked off, what was a long-term study of the turtles that were here in Nahant Marsh. And so for the past 12 summers, we've been doing these capture, mark, recapture studies, which is just like it sounds. You go out and you live trap, capture turtles. You mark them in such a way that when you catch them again, you know what individuals you've caught. And I'll show you a little bit about that here in a second. But then you release them. And so you release them back in the wild. And then based on, it's a logistically challenging to go out and count every single turtle if you're trying to survey a population. But if you sample enough and you get a sense of how many of these recaptures you're getting, it can tell you a little bit about an estimate of the population size that's here. And then if you get an estimate of the population size of the turtles that's out here, you can somewhat assess the health of the ecosystem, as it were. And so here's some picture on the left-hand side of one of the live turtle traps that we use. That basically sits into the water about halfway. The water goes about maybe half to 3/4 of the way up the trap. And it's kind of hard to see, but right here in the middle, there's a throat that the turtles can swim into. We throw some bait in there. We'll put some sardines or any chicken legs, you can put whatever you want in there. Turtles are pretty good scavengers. And so we throw some bait in the trap that attracts the turtles. The turtles swim into that throat and essentially they can't find their way back out of that trap. And so that's how we live capture them. We've got to go out and check those traps daily, or at least every other day. Turtles are air breathers, and so we keep close watch on the water levels of where the water's at in these nets, especially since the water fluctuates so much here at Nahant. We don't want to drown the turtles, and so we check them frequently, and we pull out any live turtles that we have, and then we process them to measure them. We'll take some measurements. You can see Nick here measuring the plastron, which is the undershell of this large snapping turtle here. So we'll measure shell length, maybe shell width. We'll record the location that we caught the turtle. We'll record the species. We'll record what bait we caught them on. All these things, and then we'll give the turtle a mark. And so marking the turtle is, I like to describe a turtle kind of like a turtle shell, kind of like a soccer ball. And so they have this patterning on the back of their shell, these sort of hexagonal patterns, and they have what are called marginal segments down each side of their shell, and they have 12 marginal segments down the left side and 12 marginal segments down the right side. And so that we can drill a tiny hole more or less in one of those sections, and we can choose a combination of sections to drill those tiny holes in, and that basically gives the turtle a number. And so we have a scheme that we use to give a turtle a number by drilling those small holes in the turtle. It doesn't hurt the turtle at all. It's kind of like getting your ear pierced. It's a very small hole and it heals up really quickly. And we can use those markings again, whether we catch that turtle, a couple days from then, or if we catch it years down the road. A lot of turtles are long-lived, and so we might catch a Blairs turtle, 7 years later, and be able to say, hey, that's that turtle we caught back in, 2018 or whatever it was. And so you can ask different questions about these turtles of like how much they've grown over the years and maybe what areas you're catching them in, different questions you can ask with studies like this. But for the most part, it's just doing this long-term survey just kind of gets us a sense of what's out there, how many turtles are out there, and is the population a healthy population? And so some of the main turtles that we catch here at Nahant are by far the most common is the painted turtle, which there's a small juvenile painted turtle here on the left. They always have these black splotches on the bottom, these ink blots, I like to call them. And then red-eared sliders are also common. They've got the red mark behind the ear. Snapping turtles are certainly common out here. Here's one of my students from this year holding one of our snapping turtles that she caught in one of our traps. And then of course the Blairs turtle. And that's, I'm going to show you a little bit about the research that we did on them this summer. And so first to describe, what is a Blairs turtle? They're named after a naturalist, William Blanding, it's the naturalist that first described them in the literature. So that's how they get the name Blairs turtle, named after this naturalist. They're medium-sized turtles. They're semi-aquatic. They spend a lot of time on land, but they're also in the water quite a bit. They've got this highly domed dark shell. And actually, I brought a critter to show you guys. We actually have a Blairs turtle on our education team here at Nahant. His name is Captain. So I'll kind of show him up here. And so he's got this highly domed carapace, this back part of his shell, and it's very dark. The key identifying characteristic with a Blairs turtle is that they have this bright yellow chin and neck. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick just to make sure everyone can get a bigger picture of him. So he's got this bright yellow chin and neck. That's one of the key identifying characteristics of the Blairs turtle. And they also kind of have a smile. So if you look at his mouth, it almost looks like he's smiling at you because of the way at which his mouth is upturned. And so very charismatic turtles, which is sort of some of their downfalls. One of their vulnerabilities is that they're in the pet trade or over harvested for the pet trade because of their charisma. But let me see if I can start sharing my screen here again. There we go. So charismatic turtles, bright yellow chin and neck is how you identify them, and they've got that smile. So they are endangered in quite a few states. Here's a map of their range. Here, they're mostly a Midwestern turtle. There is some small populations along the East Coast, and I've listed a few of the states here that they're endangered in. They're listed as state threatened in Iowa and New York, and they're a species of special concern in most of the other states that they live in. So there's definitely a species of conservation concern. And the federal government, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, is currently looking at possibly listing them as federally endangered as a species. So stay tuned for that. Like I said, they've got many vulnerabilities. I already mentioned overharvesting for the pet trade. But like all turtles, they are highly vulnerable to nest depredation. So things like anything you can name, any predator out there, whether it's a skunk, a raccoon, a possum, a fox, a snake. The list goes on. Everything likes to eat turtle eggs, and everything likes to eat turtle hatchlings. And so it's hard starting off as a turtle, but they also get hit by cars. So especially the females that are out traveling looking for a nesting site, unfortunately, they get hit by cars a lot. So that kind of is detrimental to their populations. Habitat loss is certainly a big factor. We've lost more than 95% of our wetlands in Iowa, and it's certainly these semi-aquatic turtles need that habitat. And Blairs turtles, unlike some other turtles, they require a little bit shallower of wetlands, more marshy type habitat. So we don't have a lot of that left. And so that could be contributing to their population declines. But one of the big things with Blairs turtles is that they take a long time to sexually mature. So they take on average 18 years to be able to reproduce and make more Blairs turtles. And so that's kind of a huge hit if a population is in decline. It takes them a long time to bounce back because of that delayed sexual maturity. So we like to raise awareness about Blairs turtles. We did a fundraiser back in the month of February. We sold t-shirts, which I have the logo on my t-shirt today. We got stickers. got a sticker on my water bottle. And we sold stickers and t-shirts to raise money and raise awareness for the Blairs Turtles, and had a pretty successful fundraiser to do that and help us fund some of the research that we do here for these turtles, which we'll get into now. So this is a list of some of the things that we've been doing to research Blairs turtles at Nahant. In addition to the population monitoring, which I just talked about, those recapture studies, we've been doing a lot of radio telemetry tracking, which I'll talk about, GPS tracking, headstarting, which I'll explain, and habitat restoration. So just to get into these a little bit, telemetry, if you're not familiar, it's basically putting a transmitter on the back of a turtle shell and kind of tracking it wherever it goes. And it's an ancient technique. It works well. Modern researchers still use it today, including us. And it's just a cheap and effective way to go out and track an animal's movement patterns. And so it takes three things to make it work. You have to have a transmitter that emits a radio frequency, and we've got one glued on the back of this juvenile Blairs turtle shell. You can see the little antenna hanging off of it. We basically just epoxy that on. Doesn't hurt the turtle at all. It weighs less than 5% of the turtle's mass. So it doesn't affect the weight of the turtle. And then it'll actually fall off because turtles shed their scutes, is what we call them. It's like shedding a fingernail. And eventually that'll pop off as the turtle grows. But we've got the antenna here, which I'm holding, and then a receiver. And with those three things, you can pinpoint where a turtle is based on where your antenna is pointed. So when your antenna is pointed towards that transmitter, you get a beeping tone, and you basically follow that beeping tone. And it's a little more complicated than it sounds. It can be quite tricky to find these turtles in the field, especially because trees can throw off the signal, and cattails can throw off the signal, and it can be challenging to find them. But it is an effective technique to at least find what wetlands they're spending their time in. But we can, if we want to, we're able to capture them by hand from the field if we need to with these transmitters. So that's one way we've been doing this for the past 3 summers now, telemetry, to kind of get a sense of what wetlands are these Blairs turtles hanging out at, and generally how do they use the landscape here in Nahant. And we've been having some good success with this technique. GPS tracking is something new I added this summer, following to the methods of some other Blairs turtle researchers. We are putting GPS trackers similarly to the telemetry transmitters. We're epoxying basically a mounting bracket onto the back of the turtle shell, and then we can zip tie. You can see 2 zip ties here. Zip tie basically a little GPS backpack onto the back of the shell, and we leave that on the turtle for about a week. Is about how long the battery life of this tracker lasts. And we'll go out, we'll pop those zip ties off, and we'll swap it out with a new GPS tracker, and then we'll offload that data back here at Nahant, and then we can see exactly where the turtle was traveling within that week span of time, which is different from the telemetry. The telemetry, you have to go out in real time in the field and use the beeping tones and radio frequency to kind of pinpoint where the turtle is. But with this GPS data, it records exactly the pattern that these turtles are taking as they're traveling. So, and I'll show you a little bit of that data here in just a second. And so again, this is my student who is working on turtles this summer, and she's holding up one of the GPS trackers. And on the left-hand side, you can see the GPS tracker attached to the turtle. And so here's some of that data, just to kind of orient everyone of what we're looking at here. This dark water on the bottom left-hand side, that is the main marsh. And over here on the left side, kind of where this turtle started, is some smaller wetlands that are on the edge of our property. And so this turtle with its GPS tracker actually went off-site and went up into this agriculture field and kind of got near this aluminum factory. And we think they're probably nesting up here in these farm fields. And so that's really interesting. We didn't know that. We kind of suspected that they might be breeding off site, but this was the first confirmation of that. And when you see kind of a bit of sloppiness in the tracking here, that's probably where the turtle stopped and was possibly doing a nesting attempt, is where those little messy spots are, at the top here. But this was just the first track that we got of the turtle. And so the way these GPS trackers work is they record every 6 minutes. I have them set up to record every 6 minutes, but they're continuously recording. But they kind of give us the data back in these chunks. And so this was one chunk of this turtle's movement. After this day, well, I don't have all the data up here. This is kind of just the interesting stuff. It was too much to kind of include all in one presentation, but that was one of the interesting tracks, was going off site to nest for this turtle. And the 1900, by the way, up here, that's that turtle's number. This particular Blairs turtle was a female, an adult female, and her number was 1900. And so this was her track. This was another one of her tracks over the summer. And again, this dark water here is the main marsh. You can actually see the floating dock here on the right-hand side. And so this is the track that she took throughout this portion of time. It wasn't the whole week. This is probably a day's worth of movement, but it's kind of interesting that she's just kind of moseying around the main marsh and kind of doing her thing there. You'll come to find out Blairs turtles are wanderers. And so that's kind of the main takeaway from this summer's worth of work. The Blairs turtles are wanderers, and they wander for miles, and they do a lot of it at night. But here's another track. This is turtle 300, another adult female. Again, starting from our main marsh and going across, this is just south of that agriculture field, but just almost walking across this parking lot right here, and then ending up in this residential area over here and spending some time messing around. Not sure what she's doing, if she's looking for a nesting site. Then she took her almost exact route back, almost beelined it back from where she started, and again, crossing the corner of this parking lot here. And then she ended up in the farm field, and it looks like her nesting attempt was probably up there. And then she ended up back in the main marsh here, and some of these beaver created wetlands over here. So just interesting to kind of look at what they're doing, where they're moving, and how they're using the landscape here. And this GPS has been very informative and supplemental to that telemetry data that we've been getting. So the other thing that we've been doing is headstarting. And so what headstarting is harvesting eggs from a gravid female, a female that has eggs who's ready to lay her eggs, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it. And so we basically treat the females that we capture with oxytocin, and that induces them to lay their eggs. And we capture those eggs from her, and we can incubate them in moist vermiculite at a certain temperature for a certain length of time, and we incubate those eggs, and then we can hatch those out, and we'll have baby Blairs turtles. And so this is an effort to supplement the population here. Throughout our 12 years of monitoring turtles out here, we haven't seen too many juveniles, haven't seen, we've certainly caught some adults out here, but we've been seeing a lack of juveniles. And so that kind of suggests that there's a lack of recruitment as far as the Blairs turtles go. And it's anybody's guess of why that is. It could be because they're nesting off site, and maybe those juveniles aren't making it back to Nahant. They're nesting in these agriculture fields, or maybe the eggs. It's not uncommon for a lot, over 90% of eggs to be depredated by predators like raccoons. Raccoons are a big one. And so we could just be losing them to predators. So we don't really know. What we do know is by headstarting them, by collecting those eggs and raising those hatchlings to a size at which they're less vulnerable to predators, is very successful in to supplementing populations of turtles in the wild. And several researchers have done this across the US and have been successful with this kind of program. And so we've adopted that here, and we've done a little bit of that to kind of help our population out. And we successfully released 4 baby Blairs turtles this summer. And I did have some more eggs from a gravid female this summer. We were able to get 13 eggs from a female this summer, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, those eggs weren't viable this year. So we won't have any baby Blairs turtles this year, but we always look forward to hopefully doing that again next year. And so that happens sometimes. Sometimes the turtles, they can still lay eggs even if they're not viable eggs, and that could be maybe she didn't breed with an adult male the last summer, or whatever the case may be. But oh, by the way, this is you've got the eggs on the right hand side. In the center here, this is a freshly born Blairs turtle, just come out of its egg. They're about the size of a $50, very small. And then this is my daughter here holding a Blairs turtle, a juvenile. That was just before their release date. So that's about how much they've grown, about the size of her hand. And then the last thing we've been doing is habitat restoration. So Mick Holgerson, who I mentioned early on in the presentation, who kind of started this whole research on the Blairs turtle out here, he also does habitat restoration, and he has created some wetlands out here, which we hope Blairs turtles will eventually begin to use. And we're still creating more wetlands, as we speak. So This is an overshot drone image of our wetland mitigation bank. And this is showing some of the wetland that we restored down here. All the little white specks that you see, all the white things are tree tubes, all the trees that we planted down there. You can see the water starting to fill in the wetland. And this is a new trail that we built that kind of runs along our property edge there and goes alongside the junkyard here. This is all Nahant property to the right of that junkyard, out to the right of the berm trail. And you can see the 280 bridge in the background there for orientation. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how folks can help maybe support turtles in general, but Blairs turtles specifically, as this is a threatened species in Iowa. Like I said, we did our fundraiser to raise awareness for this turtle, but there's many things that you can do at home to kind of help out. So I mentioned that road kills, car collisions is a contributing factor to the decline of not just Blairs turtles, but many turtles get hit by cars, especially in the springtime when females are out looking for a nesting site. And so you can't help turtles cross the road. That does help them out. And so the best thing to do is to basically take the turtle and move them in the direction in which they're heading. If you try to move them back the other direction, they're just going to turn around and find their way back. So always helpful if you see a turtle in the middle of the road, take it to the direction that it's facing and take it across the road, and it should be fine. You can even do that with snapping turtles, although I would caution folks to be careful with snapping turtles. They do obviously have a very sharp beak that could, snip your fingers, but they also have very sharp claws. So the best thing to do with snapping turtles is to wear a pair of thick gloves, grab them by the back of their shell. As long as you're at the back of their shell, they can't turn around and bite you. But you grab firmly to their shell, and they will try to scratch you with their claws, but you can kind of guide them by the back of their shell across the road. Just be aware that they do have really long necks, so they can reach around their shell a little bit, but as long as you're at the back of their shell, should be fine. So helping turtles cross the road is very helpful. Keep cats indoors. Feral cats are one of the biggest killers of wildlife in the nation, and so they're a huge problem. They kill not just turtles, but songbirds and amphibians and other reptiles and pretty much anything that's out there. Cats are good killers, and so keeping cats indoors is always helpful to prevent turtle eggs from being consumed, or also hatchling turtles from being consumed. And then supporting research and habitat restoration by donation. So we certainly encourage donations here at Nahant Marsh. You can donate to Nahant through our website, nahantmarsh.org, and we always find that helpful. We appreciate that. And so that is the end of my presentation. I would be happy to take any questions. We'll check the Q&A. It looks like there's a few. Do turtles ever get hung up on the transmitters or stuck on things? No, they don't. These are really low profile transmitters that they're glued on, right to the shell. And we situate it on the back of the shell in such a way that it doesn't get caught on things. And so turtles have, a domed shell, and we actually locate it on the back beneath that dome. So they're going, turtles go under and through stuff all the time. And basically anything that hits the top of the shell is going to kind of skim off the top. And so we kind of hide it back there on the back of the shell. And we've never had an issue with those transmitters getting caught or stuck on things. They're pretty streamlined, and they have a layer of epoxy that goes over the top, and that kind of streamlines it too. So we've never had an issue with that. How long do they take to hatch? The eggs take 50 days to hatch for Blairs turtles, and it depends on what temperature you incubate them at as well, but it's about 50 days is what we're looking at. And I forgot to mention this before, we can actually choose the sex of the turtle. And so last year we had 4 Blairs turtles, and I chose to create all females. And so based on what temperature those eggs are incubated at will dictate what sex the turtle is. And so a relatively warmer temperature is going to make females, and a relatively cooler incubation temperature is going to create males. And so we chose a warmer temperature to create females. And so all the 4 Blairs turtles that we released last year were all females. And so they take 50 days to hatch. Would they still be in the fields at harvesting time? That's a good question. They hatch out generally in August, so about this time. And so I suspect that they're hatching out of their out of their nests before field harvest. But yeah, it's hard to say. I guess it depends on what the farmer's growing. This year, the farmer's growing corn. So I suspect the corn's still standing there and probably will be there till, maybe even as long as November, depending, on weather and certain circumstances. But so, yeah, it's hard to say what's going to, if they're, where they go after they hatch. It's something I hope to figure out here in future years. So do the males establish a territory? Do the females have a territory? I think they do because we see the same. I don't know if you want to call it a territory because it's not something that they generally protect, but they certainly have like a home range, I would call it. And turtles can travel for miles, especially if they're looking for new wetlands. But from what I've noticed, the same turtles that I've been looking at and tracking for the past 3 summers, they've stayed in kind of around the same area and the same home range as far as Nahant goes. And I've started to notice a sort of pattern of where the turtles like to be and where they go and how they use the landscape. And so that's not to say that they can't change that up from year to year. There's some years where we had a severe drought several years ago, which I wasn't here for, but Mick Holgerson, who, when he was looking at these Blairs turtles, noticed that when we had a drought in Nahant, the turtles actually followed the water and they ended up going through the culvert and ended up at Carp Lake. And so in search of more water, where it was wetter towards the Carp Lake side as far as the main marsh side. And so these turtles will search for water as water levels fluctuate. Don't pick up snappers by the tail. That's a good tip, Colleen. Yeah, if you are trying to handle snapping turtles and trying to help them across the road, definitely don't pick them up by their tail. Snapping turtles are heavy, and that puts a lot of pressure on their spine and their nervous system. And so you can kind of damage that if you're not careful. So definitely pick them up by the back of their shell if you can. And it looks like Colleen suggested that you can use car floor mats to help turtles cross the road. So if you could get the turtle to maybe get on top of a floor mat, you could slide the floor mat across the road. That's a good tip. I've never heard of that one. Alma asked if they're still alive, where are they? Where have they been? If not, what happened to them? Yes, they're still out there. I haven't, since my interns have left for the summer. They left early August. I need to get back out there and do another check, but yeah, those turtles are still out there. We've been getting a signal for them in the wetland that we release them. We don't disclose exactly where the turtles are released, just to hopefully prevent, that over harvesting for pet trade. And so in hopes of preventing that, we don't release or share the location that we release the turtles at, but they're certainly still out there. How many turtles did those 13 eggs come from? That was one turtle. So yeah, Blairs turtles can have, that's not uncommon for a turtle to have up to 13, maybe even more eggs. And depending on the species of turtles, they could have more eggs than that. Snapping turtles certainly can have many more eggs than that. But yeah, 13 eggs was from the one female this year. And the other female did have eggs. I chose not to harvest those. We're a small education center, and we're not looking to get too crazy at raising turtles. And although I would have liked to harvest all of them, we chose to let the female go that I had harvested eggs for the previous year. But she did have eggs, and presumably she nested with those this year. Why did you choose to hatch females? I chose females just for conservation reasons. It's usually better to have a slightly higher proportion of females in the population to help supplement that population. So I chose females for that reason. How deep in the ground are the eggs deposited? Do they like mainly sandy soil? They're put in the ground about 4 or 5 inches beneath the surface, so not very deep. They dig that out with their hind feet. They use their claws. They dump them in there about 4 inches down, and then they cover it up. And it's pretty amazing how well turtles can camouflage their nests. If you come back even a couple hours later, if you didn't know where that turtle was, exactly where that turtle was sitting, you'd be hard pressed to find where their nest is. So they're very good at camouflaging them. The problem is those predators, they've got good snouts on them, so they sniff those eggs out. But yeah, they only lay them a few inches under the soil, and they do prefer sandy soil. So lucky for us, we have a sand prairie here. So turtles certainly like to nest in that sand prairie. But they will nest in other types of soils too, I believe. But yeah, certainly sandy soil is preferable, I would say. Is it unusual for turtles to nest in farm ground? I thought they would nest in the marsh. Did this farm ground nesting surprise you? It's hard to say. Yeah, I kind of suspected that they were nesting in this farm field only because Brian, our director here, he had observed a nesting attempt there. So we kind of suspected that they were nesting offsite, and it was just helpful to kind of confirm that this year. So I don't think it's unusual. Yeah, I don't know. Whether they definitely seem to choose upland sites. So that generally that area that they chose to nest in doesn't flood, although it did flood, during our record flood year. But the area that they seem to be trying to nest in is an area that generally doesn't flood. So I think what they try to do is get a little bit further away from the marsh in the hopes that flooding won't affect, won't drown out their nest, because eggs will drown if they're in water too long. And so I suspect that could be one reason, is just the landscape and a little bit more of an upland type habitat. Do the newly hatched turtles head straight for the water, or is moist soil adequate? That depends on the turtle species. I think Blairs turtles, they when they come out of the nest, they head straight for the water, I believe. Blairs turtles, like I said, prefer a little bit shallower wetlands, so they will hang out in the cattails and maybe on the edges, but they'll certainly go to the water right away. But there's turtles like painted turtles. Painted turtles actually overwinter in their nest, so they'll still hatch out in August, but they'll stay in their nest for the entirety of the winter, and they won't come out until next spring. And so it depends on the species of whether or not they're staying in that nest for a long time. But for those species that do hang out in the nest, they certainly do need some moisture in there. The soil can't be completely dry; the turtles will dry out. But yeah, for a lot of species, snapping turtles, Blairs turtles, red-eared sliders, I believe most of those they come out of the nest in August, and then they head for the water, and that's where they go. So I think that was the last question. And we're almost out of time. I don't know if Kelsey has any closing thoughts here, but again, I want to thank everyone for joining on and joining me today. And I had fun answering your questions, and feel free to reach out to Kelsey or myself if you think of any other questions. But yeah, thanks a lot.
No questions on my end, but thank you again, Jimmy, for the great presentation. Thank you again to everybody for participating. Once again, if you have questions, feel free to send them our way. We'll pass them along to Jimmy and get you the information you're looking for. Otherwise, we appreciate all your time and hope you have a great rest of your week. Thanks all.